It's a strange feeling. You spend 10 minutes talking to someone, nothing serious, nothing emotional, just simple things. How's work? What did you do this weekend? Yeah, the weather's been weird lately. And somehow, when it's over, you feel exhausted. Not physically tired, but mentally and emotionally drained. Almost like your brain was working the entire time. If you've ever noticed that small talk leaves you feeling strangely depleted, you're not imagining it. And it's not about being antisocial either. Because for some people, those short, ordinary conversations require a surprising amount of psychological energy. And the reason goes much deeper than personality. It often starts with how your mind processes social interactions. For many people, small talk is automatic. Words come out, reactions happen, and the conversation flows without much thought. But for others, there's a quiet layer of analysis happening in the background. While the conversation is moving forward, the mind is also asking questions. Am I responding correctly? Did that sound awkward? Should I ask something back? There's a subtle monitoring system running the entire time. It's not loud. Most people barely notice it. But it means the brain is doing two things at once: participating in the conversation and observing the conversation. That split attention requires energy, which is why a short interaction that feels effortless for one person can feel mentally taxing for another. But the deeper pattern often begins earlier than the conversation itself. Many people who feel drained after small talk didn't learn social interaction as something spontaneous. They learned it as something carefully managed. At some point growing up, social situations may have carried small emotional risks. Maybe saying the wrong thing led to embarrassment. Maybe expressing yourself wasn't always received well. Maybe silence felt safer than attention. So the brain adapted. It developed a quiet habit of scanning interactions for safety. Not in a dramatic way, just small, constant checks. Tone of voice, facial expressions, subtle reactions. Over time, this creates a social style that looks calm on the outside, but is highly aware on the inside. Which means even casual conversations require mental processing, and that processing slowly drains energy. But there's another layer most people don't notice. Small talk often activates anticipation. The mind begins predicting where the conversation might go. What will they ask next? Will this get awkward? How do I keep this going? So instead of simply responding moment by moment, the brain stays slightly ahead of the conversation, planning, preparing, adjusting. That future-oriented thinking adds another layer of mental activity, which means the brain rarely gets to relax during the interaction, even if the conversation itself is harmless. And over years, this pattern can quietly shape identity. Some people start labeling themselves as socially awkward, or antisocial, or bad at small talk. But what's actually happening is something different. Their brain processes social interaction with more awareness than average, more observation, more internal dialogue, more emotional scanning. That's not weakness. It's a protective system that developed over time, one that prioritizes social safety and thoughtful responses. The side effect is energy cost. And that's why these people often come alive in different environments. Deep conversations, creative discussions, one-on-one moments with someone they trust. Because when the need to monitor disappears, the brain can finally stop filtering. And that's when energy returns. Small talk, in contrast, keeps the mind in a strange middle space. Too shallow to feel meaningful, but still structured enough to require social performance, which makes it quietly draining. Once you notice this pattern, something interesting happens. You start realizing that the exhaustion was never about people. It was the mental work happening beneath the conversation. The silent calculations, the emotional awareness, the constant adjusting. Things most others never even notice. And once you see that, the experience starts to make more sense. It was never random. It was a pattern in how the mind learned to move through social spaces, a pattern that protected you while quietly costing energy. And sometimes, simply understanding that pattern changes the way you see yourself. If this explains something you've noticed about your own mind, there's always more beneath the surface. Because human behavior rarely happens by accident. There's usually a pattern behind it. And once you see it, you can't really unsee it.